Okay, good. While we're waiting, hi from Toronto. Okay, good. So while we're waiting, I'm going to share the random Erik experience of the week, and then we'll get started. So, like a lot of people around the country, we've been dealing with cold weather. I've still got a house back in Oregon where I lived for 30 years. And we found out that after about an 8-day period without electricity in the house, when we were finally able to get some friends back inside the house, that a pipe busted and we had flooding inside the house for between 3 and 4 days, as near as we can figure, and basically destroyed a 2,500 square foot bottom floor. So we were dealing with that. But the really random thing is that while the demolition crew was in there, kind of cleaning things up, drying things out, they walk into a big closet and they find bats. We have a family of bats that apparently wanted to escape the cold and made their way inside our home and decided that the closet underneath the stairs was the best place to put up shop. So in addition to handling water damage and restoration, we had to call out an expert bat wrangler to get the bats out of our house. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So Aksum says, so we're ready for Halloween. I said to my wife, we should go into the business of selling bats to vampires because we have our own supply. So that's the random thing that happened to me this week. All right, good. So we got a bunch of people in here. I'm super happy to see you're all attending. I so much enjoy talking about ChatGPT, and I'm really excited to present this. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is me. I am Erik Gross. I am the co-founder of the Tech Academy, a software developer boot camp, based out of Portland, Oregon. More about that later on. I've been a software developer for a long time. I've really been writing software since I was around 11, but in terms of a career, I've got a couple of decades in the industry. A lot of my technology background and my love of teaching engineering and technical concepts comes from my time in the Navy. I was a U.S. Navy enlisted man, a nuclear reactor operator, actually, and was an electronics technician in that discipline. So operated nuclear reactors, repaired and maintained electronic equipment, and learned a lot about digital computers and everything nerdy in engineering, honestly. So that's me. So we have an assistant in the class, as always. Her name is Regina. Those of you who have attended a few of these talks probably recognize the name. She's awesome. She's in the background taking care of the chat, answering questions, that sort of thing. Please be nice. If you're not nice, which happens very rarely, she'll just boot you, because these classes are for awesome people that want to learn. They're not for not awesome people that want to bother people. So I don't think we'll have any problem with that at all. We do have a chat. We've been using it a little bit right now. Oh, so I got Joseph as an ex-gunner's mate. That's fantastic. I will use 1- and 2-syllable words for the gunner's mate, just to make things super simple. I'm sorry, that was a military dig and not very fair because they can't defend himself. So in the chat, one point of clarification: we have regular chat like you're used to seeing in Zoom or any of these meeting programs, but we also have a Q&A section. Don't use the Q&A section. We don't watch it at all. We have Regina watching the chat itself. So if you have questions, just throw them into chat. And I do know chat is working. We've had a bunch of people throw in where they're joining us from, which is awesome. Hopefully some of you are recovering from some of the cold weather. But again, if you have any questions, you have anything like that, we're gonna have a Q&A towards the end. But Regina is there. Regina is there monitoring the chat to help you. Oh, excellent. Got more people from Canada. Okay, so the basic agenda: we'll have a little explanation of the Tech Academy. We'll have the workshop all about ChatGPT, which is awesome. At the end of that, time permitting, we'll have some Q&A. And even if we don't have a lot of time for Q&A, we'll have a way for you to send your questions in, and I will see them and answer them. We'll go over some data about our coding boot camps. We do these things as a public service, but honestly, we are in business running boot camps. So we want to let people know about who we are and what we do and that kind of thing in case you're interested. And we do have a free gift for you at the end. So stick around. All right, so who are we? Well, the Tech Academy is a coding boot camp founded in 2014. In fact, in a couple of weeks here, we're going to have our 10th anniversary celebration, which is really, really cool. Looking forward to that. We have all kinds of pictures and stories from the early days. And for a company to survive around 10 years is pretty cool. What we offer is boot camps that give you certification programs, essentially. Like, how do you break into technology? And our programs, more about this later on, but yeah, they're cost effective. They really are. But a real key differentiator is they are self-paced, which is a really cool thing as a learner to go through a program where you're given the opportunity to catch up if you fall behind or to move quickly through stuff you already know. But I'll talk more about that later on. We focus on the skills that are needed by the industry right now to bring on valuable entry-level technology workers. We don't teach fluff or 20-year-old technology like you see in some academic programs. We teach things that are in demand right now. More about this later on, but our tuition is under the national average. We have programs that start at $5,300, which is great. And I do want to read our mission statement. I do this every time because this is what drives me, my co-founder, all of our staff. This is why we're here. The mission statement of the Tech Academy is to graduate entry-level technology professionals that excel in the basics of their field and thereafter have successful careers in the tech industry and whose actions raise industry standards and surpass client expectations. So that's our mission statement. And our product is you working in tech. All right. So if you want any information about about us, about the Tech Academy and our boot camps, you can go to this link. Regina is dropping it into chat. And there's a very brief contact form to fill out there. And once you fill that out, you can continue on through and find out all about our programs. So I'll pause for a moment, take a drink of water real quick. Anybody who wants to follow that link and fill out the form, take a moment to do so right now. Oh, excellent. We've got one of our students on the C# and .NET course in here. That's fantastic. Glad you're here. Judy said US dollars. Yes, those are US dollars that I talked about. Programs. When I said program starting at 5,300, that's US dollars. Oh, Kelly. She says my story was batty. Oh, Earl Green is joining us from Hillsboro, Oregon. I lived in and around that area for a long time. West Side represent. All right, good. So let's go and move on. Here's what this class is and what it isn't. What it is our work in explaining complex terms and concepts in a very simple manner. And you're going to see that when we start talking about ChatGPT. We're actually going to start, as you're going to see in a moment here, with definitions of some of the fundamental terms because they lead to you being able to use the technology better. And that's just true of any discipline that you're learning. The better you understand the fundamentals behind the subject, the better you understand the key terminology of the subject, the more you're able to use that subject effectively. So we're going to get a lot of that. There is not going to be any writing of code in this class, although you are going to do a lot of some writing when we start demonstrating some ChatGPT stuff. We're not writing code in this class, but we regularly, in other words, every single week, run free coding classes. We'll give you links to be able to take advantage of our free coding classes later on at the end of the presentation. So that's what this class is and isn't. All right, so let's go ahead and switch here. I'm going to move over to the ChatGPT. Let me go all the way to the beginning. I apologize. I should have been at the beginning of this. We can go to our ChatGPT presentation. And this question is all about answering the question, what is ChatGPT? What is this thing all about? And more importantly, how can I use it to improve my work? And I want to stress that while we are a technology company, we train people in tech, the stuff we're going to go over with in ChatGPT applies to whatever task you do, whether it's for a living or your own private research or whatever it is, whatever work you do, there is usually a way for ChatGPT to make it easier. It's not going to solve everything for you, and I'll show you some of the limitations involved. But this presentation is all about what is ChatGPT and how can you use it to improve your work. Now, before we move on, I want to let you know that there is a point in this where I'm going to actually go through using ChatGPT. And I would very much like for you to be able to follow along if you want to. It's fun, okay? And it'll really cement the concepts that we're going to cover tonight if you can actually do the same things in ChatGPT that I'm going to. So if you already have a ChatGPT account, great. If you don't, it only takes about 2 minutes tops to get a free ChatGPT account. And the free account is totally fine for what we're going to do tonight. So if you will go to openai.com, OPENAI.com, you should be able to register for a free account, again, in under 2 minutes. You could do that right now while we're moving through, and it shouldn't slow you down at all. If you've already got an account, you're going to be great. Now, the free version of ChatGPT is version 3.5. Those of you who are using it already know that. There's a paid version. Version 4 costs $20 a month. You can use that if you want to. It's not necessary to have the paid account. All right, so here's the basic agenda. We're going to cover the basic terms involved in ChatGPT and hopefully clarify a few things about why it's called what it's called and some of the technology underneath the hood of ChatGPT. Not to be boring. In fact, I don't think you'll find it boring, but actually to add to your understanding of why the tool works the way it does, what it's meant for, and what it's not meant for. Then we're going to go into what's called prompt engineering. The prompt is basically how to talk to this artificial intelligence tool called ChatGPT. That's what prompts are. And prompt engineering is creating really good questions and requests for this tool. We'll go into everything involved in making that as effective as possible. It's actually not complex when you break it down, and I think it'll be very valuable to you. And then we're going to go one step further into a really cool technology where you can actually feed your prompts with examples of what you want. This is called zero-shot prompting, one-shot prompting, and few-shot prompting. We'll explain all those terms as we go through. So that's our agenda, right? One thing I want to stress is, even if you already know about ChatGPT already, even if you're using it on a pretty regular basis, please stick around. I think you'll find, because I've presented this to a lot of people, I think you'll find that even if you've got some experience using ChatGPT, you're probably going to learn something new that'll just add to your ability to use this tool. Okay, so let's go over some basics. I'm going to take a moment for people to read this, and then I'll go through some details on it. It's all about what is a chatbot. All right, so I actually want to start with the bottom sentence there that says early chatbots were basically like choose your own adventure books. If you weren't lucky enough to read choose your own adventure books when you were a kid, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say. It was so cool. You could read along in a story and you make decisions, and based on your decision, it would tell you to go to one of either two different pages in the book, and you jump ahead to a certain page and read through what happens. You have to make decisions, right? Well, early chatbots, before the advent of like ChatGPT and similar technologies, they were basically like a choose your own adventure book where you, as the creator of the chatbot, had to anticipate the possible choices that the user of the chatbot might make, and you were only able to provide responses based on what selections were available to the person, to the user. So you're kind of restricting the user to answer yes, no kind of questions. Very simple, like only one of two choices kind of questions, right? And so you would basically have, if this, question from the user, then this response. That's really how they work. Now, they're a lot more complex now, and we're going to explain how they're able to be more complex. But chatbots have been around as a technology for dozens of years. It's just recently that they got a lot more capable, and we'll see why. And it starts with understanding what a language model is. Now, this whole subject is under the umbrella of artificial intelligence, basically utilizing computers to simulate real thinking by real human beings. And before we go one step further, I want to clarify something. This is a concept we went over in our artificial intelligence free class that we did about a week or two ago. And you can go onto our YouTube channel and watch that class. We'll provide links to the YouTube channel when we're done. But here's the thing I want to stress. Even though the technology industry and the media are calling this whole subject artificial intelligence, I want to stress that computers are not intelligent. To be more precise, they're not alive. They can't actually think. They have no spark of life in them. And more importantly, they cannot create something without being told to create it. Now, these tools, these artificial intelligence tools, have gotten so complex that it can look like they're thinking. But do not make the mistake of thinking they're doing so. The way they simulate that thinking behavior is pretty cool, but computers can't think. All right, so what's a language model? It is a type of artificial intelligence, and it's trained to understand and generate human language. There's a lot of different artificial intelligence tools. And again, we go into several categories in that training we did a couple weeks ago. So you might want to check that out. But this type of artificial intelligence, this type of computer program is trained on human language. Now, we'll go into what that training means in a bit here, but this tool is all about human language. There's other artificial intelligence for other disciplines. The way these artificial intelligence tools work, the way this language model works, is it will suck in a tremendous amount of text. And because of the programming behind it, it will actually learn the patterns and structures of language. Things like grammar, vocabulary, common phrases. It's just taking the powerful tools of artificial intelligence and applying them to the area of written human language. So that's what a language model is. Once you've trained a language model, it can predict words. Now, I want to stress something. And again, this is all about how we teach at the school. If you can break a concept down to its most simple form, and then add on complexity after that, it makes it so much easier to use that concept. At its core, all a language model does is predict the next most logical word. Now, it does it super fast, but that's all that's actually occurring inside a language model. You have fed a bunch of language into it, and when you ask it to do some work, the work it's doing is simply predicting the first word that should come out as a response, and then the second, and the third, and the fourth, and so on. So it can predict the next word in a sentence. It can complete a prompt, it complete a question you're asking of it, or it can generate entirely new pieces of text. And here's the cool part. That text will be coherent. It'll be understandable. It will be relevant to the context that you're operating in. We'll show you how to make that happen, but it's an amazing tool. But at its core, all it does is predict words in certain patterns. Those patterns obey the rules of human language. So that's a language model. What do we use them for? Well, a lot of things. You can use them to translate from one language to another. You can use them to generate a lot of text. And you can use them as the underlying basis of these tools, these chatbot tools like ChatGPT. And by the way, there's a number of these on the market. ChatGPT is just the most popular. So that's a language model. All right, let's move on. Now, here's another word from this whole area. What's a transformer? Well, lots of words in English have multiple meanings. Transformer in electricity means a device that will it'll take electricity at one level of voltage and either raise it or lower it in voltage. That's why up on these telephone poles and utility poles around your neighborhood, you see these big round cylinders. They're called transformers, and they are taking electricity that comes in from the power plant that's really high voltage, and it's dropping it down to the voltage you need in your home. That's not what this transformer is, but it does involve changing things. It is an artificial intelligence model, okay? Only been around about 5 or 6 years, and it's really crucial for working with human language. Here's what it does. It has a feature that's called an attention mechanism. This was a huge development. This feature, this specialized aspect of the computer program, lets the program consider all of the words in a sentence simultaneously. Now, that may sound simple because it is when we do it as human beings, but to get a computer to take in a full sentence and understand the relationship of every word in that sentence to every other word in that sentence is a big accomplishment. And what it does is it opens up the ability for a computer program to actually grasp context and word relationships. And if you think about the idea that a language model is tasked with predicting the next word, understanding the whole concept of a sentence would be a key aspect of getting that to occur. And that's what a transformer does. Again, it's just a computer program. It's a pretty complex program, but it's just a computer program. So now if we bring all this together, we've talked about what a chatbot is. We've talked about what a language model is and what a transformer is. So what's ChatGPT? It's a language model. It's a language model called the GPT, a generative pre-trained transformer. Generative meaning its main purpose is to generate text, to generate human language. Pre-trained meaning it was trained on a ton, and I mean an absolute ton of data. And transformer, let's go back. It's a transformer in that it's able to work with full sentences. So that's what a GPT is. It's a language model. It was developed by this company called OpenAI, and it has been fine-tuned. Now, without getting all nerdy, that just means that we're going to focus in the purpose of the tool and, more importantly, the kind of output that's going to come from the tool. The output that this thing is supposed to generate is conversational text. And those of you who've used ChatGPT know that you can talk back and forth with it. It's a conversation, right? So it can understand and generate human-like responses in this chat format, this conversational format, which means you can talk to it, quote unquote, on a bunch of topics because it's been trained on a massive set of data, billions upon billions of sentences gathered from all over the internet. So that's what ChatGPT is. All right. Because it's been trained on this wide range of internet text, it can answer your questions, it can provide explanations, and it can engage in a discussion that's very similar to what would happen if you were happen to be talking to an expert in a specific discipline, which will come in handy later on in this presentation when we talk about how to actually work with it. So this is how you work with it. You work with it with ChatGPT and any language model. You work with it with a thing called a prompt. This is a piece of text that the model is going to use as its starting point to generate a response. Remember that this tool is all about generating one word and then the next word and then the next word. All of these words are going to be formed the way human conversation is formed, in full sentences, with correct grammar, all that kind of thing. And the prompt is, you're telling the tool, where do I start? I could generate all manner of text. Please tell me where to start. They can be a question. They can be just simply a statement, or they can even be incomplete sentences that you're asking the model to complete. And this thing can respond based on its training and the patterns it's learned. So it's been trained, i.e. had a bunch of data fed into it. It's been trained on a wide range of subjects, and it learns patterns of human language. So from the point of view of this language model, because ChatGPT is a language model, right? What does it consider important in that initial text you're going to give it? That initial prompt that says, hey, I want you to make a bunch of responses for me. I want you to make some text for me. What does it care about receiving? First, the prompt must have clarity. It should be clear and unambiguous. You're trying to make sure that this model understands what your request is, understands what your question is. So you need to be very clear. You need to give it sufficient background information or context to make sure that its responses are accurate and relevant to the area you're working in. If you're working in the area of electrical system design, then the responses it creates are going to be a lot different than if you're working in the area of writing a children's story. That's an example of context, and we'll have a lot more examples of context and how to use this in a few moments. The other thing that's important in a prompt is specificity. You need to be specific about what you're asking or instructing the model to do. It will do what you tell it to, but if you don't tell it what to do, it will assume. And I want to stop here and point out something it's part of what makes using these ChatGPT and tools like it's part of what makes it a little bit different way of thinking. For years, those of us who've used computers or programmed computers are used to the fact that computers at their basic level cannot embrace ambiguity. You must tell them, for example, the exact action to be taken for any possible event that occurs. And if you do not specify what to do when an exact event occurs, it won't do anything. That's just one of the fundamentals of how a computer works. What's so cool about these tools like ChatGPT is, in many ways, it's not restricted in that way. If you aren't specific about what you want, it will come up with something that seems logical and give you that anyway. It won't say, I'm sorry, you need to be more specific. It'll say, well, I've come up with this. I hope it's what you want. If you're going to make effective use of this tool, though, you'll tell it exactly what you want. And we'll show you an example of that in a moment. Another thing that's important in a prompt, it needs to be brief. It's got to have brevity. You do want to provide some context, but you want your prompt to be concise. You don't want to put in a 10-page prompt, right? You don't want to overwhelm the model with a bunch of unnecessary information. Give it what it needs to do its job. And in a moment here, we're going to clarify exactly what those things are, but just give it what it needs and no more. There's a few more. Intent is really important. Even though this is not a human being you're talking to, it does work with the concept of intent. What's the purpose or goal? What are you, as the user of the chatbot, trying to accomplish? It's different based on your use case. Do you want it to generate text? Do you want it to answer a question? Do you want it to do a specific task? You've got to tell it what you're trying to get it to do. And again, if you don't, it'll assume something, but it might not be what you want it to do. Tone and style matter too. Remember, it's been trained on a huge amount of data, from casual conversation to academic papers to lots of computer code. You've got to tell it what kind of tone and style you want the response to be. And they should align with the kind of outcome you want. If you're trying to generate a research paper, it's going to be a lot different tone and style than if you're trying to generate a humorous story, as an example. And so in the prompt, you've got to tell it what kind of tone and style you want. And finally, grammar and syntax. Remember, it's been trained on billions of sentences, and it's learned the actual structure of sentences. And so the prompts you give it should, to the best of your ability, obey standard grammar and syntax. That helps prevent it from misunderstanding you want, because it's going to try to match up what you gave it against all of the data it's been trained on. And if the data you give it doesn't obey standard grammar, it'll have a hard time matching it up against what it knows. So let's get to the practical element of this. All that is background. And what we're going to teach you right now is, if you're going to write a prompt, if you're going to use ChatGPT to generate text or do some work for you, what are the 5 things that are important in that prompt? Now, we're going to explain each one of these in detail, and we're actually going to do a demo of each one of these 5 things so you can see what happens when you start to add these into a prompt. But here they are: role, result, intent, context, and constraint. Let's explore each one of those. And this is where we're going to go back and forth from the slides to ChatGPT. So, what's a role? I'm going to take a sip of water while you read this. Let me clarify a couple of terms in here. JavaScript is a computer programming language. Many of the people in this meeting have probably heard of JavaScript. It's a very popular computer programming language. You can use it to write programs in a wide variety of areas. Node is a very specific tool used by JavaScript computer programmers. And what Node does is it allows you to write computer programs in JavaScript that are not intended to work on web pages. Those of you who've been around the technology industry for a while know that that's a pretty cool thing, because for about 20 years, JavaScript was used to write computer programs that would change the behavior of a web page. They would, for example, make dynamic calendars possible, where you could select a date, or the information you're going to be presented with would change based on your user preferences. JavaScript is used for all that kind of customization of web pages. What Node does is it lets you write programs in JavaScript that operate outside of the context of your web browser. It's pretty cool. So that's what Node is, right? I also want to explain what direct response copywriter is. Copywriting is the writing of marketing text. Like when you read an ad in the back of a magazine, that's trying to get you to buy something. That's copy, is what that's called, right? Or if you're on a web page, a landing page describing the features of some new slippers or whatever you're going to buy, that is copy. Direct response is the practice of writing marketing messages that all in one shot by the person reading them will get them to respond by buying or expressing interest. That's what direct response is. You send the message directly to a person and you are trying to generate a response, whether that's then sending you money, placing an order, asking for more information. That's what direct response copywriting is. Okay, good. So I just want to explain those terms. But you see the concept of a role. You're telling ChatGPT who to pretend to be. And you can get really specific in this. It's very cool. You're going to see some examples. So let's look at result, and then we'll do a demo. Result is, what outcome do you want? What are you trying to get ChatGPT to make for you? What's the information you're trying to obtain in your interaction with ChatGPT? That's useful for the module, for the language model, because ChatGPT has a language model underneath it, and because it can help it provide relevant responses, things that are useful to you. Here's an example. There's two examples here. The first one says, create a controller method that will parse HTTP request JSON body data to update a record in a MySQL database. Now, let me explain the technical terms in there. All right. When you're writing a computer program, you can make one part of the program be in charge of receiving user interaction and deciding what to do. For example, you could have on the screen an option of viewing the records of a student at the school or creating a new student at the school. Both of those requests might go down to a part of the program called a controller. And based on what's being asked, what kind of action you want to have happen, the controller can work with the other elements of the computer program to make that work occur. That's what a controller is. A method is a specific part of a computer language that gets work done. More precisely, a method is a reusable chunk of computer code that can be called upon over and over again as needed to get a specific element of work done. So inside the controller, that part of the program that's responsible for getting certain work done, a method is what does some of the work. Now, parsing means reading through text and separating out the different elements of the text. That's what parsing is. If you were reading through a magazine article and trying to find all the parts of it that refer to, say, archaeology, you would be reading through, scanning, and each thing in there that mentions an archaeology term, you would take note of. That's an example of parsing by a human being. You can have computer programs that do the same thing. That's what parsing is. HTTP it means hypertext transfer protocol. This is the way that you make requests for web pages and receive web pages. You're in your browser, you're in Chrome or Firefox or maybe even Bing if you hate your life. But you're in your web browser and you ask for a web page. The request for that web page is going to be sent off to some distant computer. And then the web page is going to be received from that distant computer. The way to request those is this protocol or agreement called HTTP. When you send one of the requests in to a distant computer for a web page, you are sending a capital R request. So that's what a request is. When you send it in, you might want to give it some additional data. You might want to say, give me a list of all students whose last name starts with S. You would make that request by including what's called a body on the request. The body is extra data. you would format that data in a format called JSON. All JSON is a specific agreed upon way to format text so it can be used by a computer. And that's all this stuff is. So let's move forward. And it says MySQL database. Databases are just stored collections of electronic data. There's lots of technology out there for storing electronic data. One of the most popular is a free tool called MySQL. You can download it on your computer and use it now, right? MySQL is just one way to set up a database and be able to work with the data. Put data into the database and then request data from the database. So that first thing in double quotes, create a controller method that will parse HTTP request JSON body data to update a record in a MySQL database, just means write some computer code that will receive a request related to data in a database, and it'll actually update the data in the database. That's all that means. I just want to explain some of the technology terms so you're not in a mystery about things. Look at the second one. It's a lot easier to understand. Write a sales letter to be sent to my mailing list. I don't think I need to explain a lot about that one. It's a pretty straightforward thing. But the whole point is, these are both examples of results. What's the outcome you want? What do you want the ChatGPT model to spit back out at you? All right, so let's do the demo. There's two demos here. We're going to do one all the way through, and we'll come back and do the other one, time permitting. So the first demo we're going to do is the thing on top. I already read it. I already cleared up what all the terms are. We're going to see what happens when you give this to ChatGPT. And I want to clarify, all we're giving right now is one of the 5 elements of a good prompt. We're only giving it the result. None of the other 4 elements are being given. We're not giving it a role. We're not giving it constraints. We're not giving it context. We're just saying, here's the result I want. So we're going to do that right now. I'm going to escape out of this. I'm literally, and this is how you guys can follow along. I'm going to take this text. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it into chat. Those of you who want to are free to grab this and go slow here now. We're going to go to ChatGPT. You're going to make a new conversation. It's in the upper left right here. So here I have a new conversation. This down at the bottom is where you enter the prompt. And I want you to paste in that prompt. And we're going to hit enter. Now, there's going to be a lot of technical terms here. Just in the interest of time, I can't explain all of them. But what's important here is to see the change in the output as we add more and more things into the prompt. All right, now, again, there's going to be a lot of terms here that we're not going to be able to drill into deeply. But what's more important is to see the quality of the output. Notice that with only this one sentence thing going on here, okay? Oh, let me see if I can paste this the right way. I so apologize. I pasted it the wrong way. Everyone should have it now. I'm so sorry. Go ahead and grab that from chat and enter it in like I did. There's a couple things I want to point out. One is that for those of you who are creating this output right now, you may notice that you may not get exactly the same output I did. Even if you enter in exactly the same prompt, you might not get exactly the same output, which is kind of a weird thing when you're used to using computers. Normally, if you provide the exact same input, you should expect the exact same output. These text generation artificial intelligence tools are not guaranteed to produce the exact same output every time, which is kind of weird. But it's just the nature of it, and you need to know that in using them. It doesn't have the same prediction every single time. Exactly why is a subject way beyond the time we have inside this workshop, you learn a lot more about that on our artificial intelligence boot camp, which is a really good boot camp. All right, so again, we're not going to break into all this code, but I want to point out a couple of things. It looks like we're dealing with changing information about a user, including their name and email. All right, good, fine. It came up with some code, and I happen to know this code really well. This would all work, okay? Now, what's interesting is this code is written in a programming language called Python. All right, okay, good, fine. Now, watch what happens when we add in a role. Now, go carefully on this. Follow exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to paste this in for everybody. When you get it, follow what I do. And I'll explain why. What we do not want to do is use this same chat that we have going on with ChatGPT and just add this new information in. We don't want to do that. What I'm trying to illustrate to you here is how much better the outputs get when you include each of these 5 elements. And if we were just to paste in this new information in this same conversation we're having, ChatGPT will remember what we did already, and you're not getting a true comparison. Now, in the real world, you would probably include all the right elements in your prompt. But just for learning purposes, I want you to generate a new conversation. You go to the left here, new conversation, and we want to get both of those text snippets I put in chat or in the Zoom chat in here. So first, you're going to paste in the one that says you are an expert JavaScript developer. This part's important. We want to add more, but you do not want to hit enter right now. You have to hit shift enter a couple of times, which lets you add enters, add a couple lines inside the prompt. Now, go back to chat and copy that first thing about creating a controller. Copy it, and then paste it in. And now, before you hit enter, notice what we've done. We have the desired result. But now we've added in a role. You're an expert JavaScript developer with strong Node experience. Once you've got that in there, hit enter. And let's see what kind of result we get from it. I like seeing that wow in the chat. That's really cool. Mimi, I see your note. When we get to Q&A, Mimi, please remind me to look at your question. I want to address it. All right, so let's talk about what's different here. One is a real basic one. This is written in JavaScript. That's the language we wanted. When we didn't specify a language, it just assumed Python, which is equally as popular. But now we have it in the right language. Notice also that it has a little more information, some descriptive information, right? It's telling you exactly what to do in each step, and it's doing a really good job of it. But, and it's got information about connecting to the database, which is nice. But we're still working with just ID and data. Like we don't really know, like, it's just that update something in a database, the something has just been assumed. And the something here appears to be something related to maybe a user. We're not really sure. It's very vague. I can't really tell what kind of thing we're keeping track of. Is it a user? Is it a student? Is it a product? I don't know. It's kind of vague. This code is usable, but I would have to customize it a lot. So let's find out what we can do to make it better. Go back here. And now let's talk about intent. Go ahead and read this. I'll make it larger for you. Now I'll explain some of the technical terms here. But intent is really like, why are you even doing this? What are you going to use this output for? We've covered what that you want it to make. We've covered who you want the ChatGPT to pretend to be. Now we're explaining why. What are we trying to get done here? So we already know about what a controller function is. This Express.js API. Express.js is a collection of code pre-made for you, a collection of pre-made computer code that'll help you build what's called an API. An API means application program interface, and it's just a way for two separate computer programs to talk to each other. So you're using this pre-made code to create a way for other programs to talk to your program. That's all you're building. Why? So that your program can implement what's called CRUD functionality. CRUD sounds awful. It isn't. It stands for create, read, update, and delete. Those are the four things you can do to something in a database. You can create something new in a database. You can read what's in a database. You can update something that's already in a database, or you can delete something from a database. Create, read, update, delete. So our code is going to provide a way for other programs to communicate with our program, and based on the request, it'll either create, read, update, or delete something in a database. That something will relate to toy manufacturing. So now we have a lot more intent here. So let's see what happens when we put that into our prompt. Same thing. I'm going to copy this in. I'm going to throw it into chat for everyone. And you need to put all three of these, one after the other, into a brand new chat conversation. Shall we go to ChatGPT? We want a new conversation. And we will go to the very first one. Go with the expert one. You are an expert. You find this in chat. Remember to hit enter once or twice to give yourself some space. You're an expert JavaScript developer. Now grab the result, create a controller method, copy that out of chat, paste it in, hit enter. Maybe make sure shift enter, right? If you forget and you hit enter and it starts, you can just hit the stop button and it'll stop the work. And finally, grab that last one I just put in there. The controller function will be used. And paste that in. While it is running, go ahead and run it. I'm going to address a question just popped up in chat. Stacy said, my search does not show the step-by-step as seen on Erik's screen, step 1, step 2, step 3. Actually, I don't understand that. The search? I don't understand what that means. I hope this helped by showing you the prompt. I'll go back up here for a second. That's what your prompt should look like. And you can grab all three of those elements to make that prompt from the Zoom chat. So let's look at what we're getting out of this. Well, now we have a step-by-step plan. I really like that. Notice here, now we have something that's going to update a toy record. Before, it was very generic. It was update ID and data. Well, that's very vague. Now it's specifically oriented to updating things about a toy. What are the things we might care about on a toy? Well, the name of the toy, the price, the manufacturer. This is a lot more logical. This is very helpful. Okay, good, awesome. So our output is getting more and more valuable because it's more honed into the exact problem we're trying to solve, the exact thing we want. So it's pretty good. I could follow this and I could put all this code in and I wouldn't have to change very many things. My output is getting better. Kelly from the Trail says it's also shorter. Yes, which is really good in coding. All right, good. So how do we make it even better? So we have intent. Let's talk about context. Arguably the most important thing. Read this whole thing. This is kind of like the reason you're even doing the work at all. Give me more context. Give me more info about the problem you're trying to solve. So let's look at our example right here in quotes. So we're going to update something in the database. What? Well, it's a product. What are the things we care about with the product? We call them fields. Well, SKU stands for standard, it stands for shopkeeping unit. Many of you have heard this term before. It's a unique identifier for any product that you can sell. Something you can go to a store and they will, like a retail store, and talk about SKUs, and they'll know that means a unique product. It's usually a very, very long number. So we care about the SKU, a description of the product, and the unit price. What does it cost per product? Now, another nerdy technical term. The application or program that we're building is going to use a tool called Sequelize ORM. Now, this is a much deeper dive. I don't have the time, unfortunately, to explain all of it, but it's pre-made code that lets your program interact with the database. That's what this pre-made code is all about. How does your computer program that you're building work with a database? That's what it's for. So, same kind of demo. We'll take this, and now we're going to have 4 elements. Copy that. Throw it in the chat. And we're going to build it the same way. But again, give it a brand new conversation. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to copy all of this because I'm going to add that new thing on right at the bottom. You can do that if you want to. Copy the prompt. Make a new conversation. Paste all that bad boy in. The caps don't really matter too much. Give me a shift enter, and now I'm going to add in this 4th element that I just put in. The object to be updated is a product. I'm going to put that in, and now I've added a bunch of context. You can see my whole, I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Here's my whole prompt. I've given it a role. I've given it a result. Here's my role. I've given it a result. I've given it the intent, and now I've given it some context. Now let's hit enter. All right. Now, again, there's a lot of technology, nerdy stuff in here. If you went through one of our JavaScript bootcamp, you would be able to read through all of this and understand every single element of it. All I'm trying to illustrate is the quality of the output. And here, what we've done is we've made the output much more appropriate to the exact tools we use and the problem we're trying to solve. We're using a tool called this Sequelize ORM. And so it shows us exactly how to set that up. And now notice we're working with a product, not a toy. Notice we're working with a description and a unit price and a SKU, the exact things about the product we care about. It's all built in there. We don't have to write that anymore. It's all written for us. Saves us a lot of time. And it shows us exactly how to build this controller method. All the way through with the exact right things: SKU, description, unit, price. Notice it handles any kind of errors, like what if someone didn't include the SKU? What if they didn't include the, what if we couldn't find the product? It's accounting for all the possibilities. This is really good code. It even has a catch-all for any kind of error that might happen. I could use this code almost exactly as is in my computer program, and it wouldn't require a lot of changes. Now it's even more valuable to me. And it shows me how to hook everything all together into my final application. Very, very valuable. We're going to do one last one. And this one, again, is a bit nerdy. Okay. But this is constraint. And this is arguably one of the more important things to think with. A condition or limitation placed on the response. You can tell it, you've already told it what you want. Now tell it what you don't want. This is where you would do things like the kind of style of or tone of your writing. Or, as you can see down here, there's a specific thing in the JavaScript language called an arrow function. Again, we don't have time to dive into it too deep. We teach that in the JavaScript bootcamp. And in fact, most of our boot camps, we do not want to use arrow functions. For whatever reason, let's say at our company, our programming standard is that we don't use arrow functions. Well, you want to make sure that ChatGPT doesn't use them because they're relatively common. And ChatGPT was trained on a bunch of them. You don't want to use them, so you have to put that in. So I'll take that. This is our final demo on this prompt. I'll take it and I'll throw it into chat. Jeffrey says, I love that it even has comments, something even a lot of programmers don't do consistently. You know what? That's because it said the role is an expert JavaScript developer. All right. I didn't do a copy properly. I apologize for that. Let me copy this, put it in the chat. And remember, you're going to do all 5 of them. So again, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go to the top here, copy these 4, give myself a brand new conversation, paste it in, hit Shift Enter a couple times, grab the one that I put into chat about do not use arrow functions, paste it in at the bottom, and now I've added in a constraint. So let's go to the top. We have a role. Here's the role. We have a result, the controller method. We have context, where this is going to be used, why we're doing it. We have, let me get the name for it right. Sorry, we had intent, and now we have context. So we had intent right here, now we have context. And finally, we have a constraint. We don't want arrow functions. Go ahead and hit enter on this bad boy. Those of you who are JavaScript programmers will be able to tell that we don't have arrow functions. Those of you who aren't have to trust me that it's not there. So it's very similar to what we got before. Same sequence. It's all there. And this is all perfectly usable code. I would have to change very little, if anything, about this, which is pretty cool. Now, let's see if we can go back to the one just before this. See that right there? That's an arrow function. This is the one we just did immediately prior. But now, when we go to the one we just did, here's the exact thing, same thing, and we do not have an arrow. It's a minor thing, but it matters in a lot of software development companies. If they don't want to use those, you don't want the pre-made code to have them, or you got to change them all to a different way of doing things. So to review, we have these 5 elements: role, result, intent, context, and constraint. When I was learning this, and I'll tell you in a moment how I learned it, when I was learning this, I would actually have this up as a list on a separate document or on a second monitor when I was writing my prompts, because it reminded me to address each one of these 5 things. In fact, I was so nerdy about it when I was working this out, I would literally write into the prompt, role, and I would list out what its role was, result, and I'd list out the result I wanted, just to start to reinforce it. I no longer do that now that I'm real comfortable with it, but I often refer to this list when I'm writing a prompt because it's easy to forget all of the nuances. So I hope that's helpful to you. We got another concept to cover, but this is how to craft a prompt for maximum effectiveness in ChatGPT. Now, because in the interest of time, we're not going to do the second one, which is the sales letter, but I'm going to show you the progression. And you could take this, watch this recording, and you could enter these ones in and see what happens, okay? Write a sales letter to be sent to my mailing list. I'm going to do that one, and then we'll do the very last one, just so you can see how much better it can be. So just watch this, brand new conversation. I'm going to say, write a sales letter to be sent to my mailing list. And the first thing it says is, I kind of need to know a bit more about your product or service. Can you please provide me with this? So I'm going to say, write it anyway. I'm not going to give it any other information. Write it anyway. So all it can do is give me a template. You see how this is of limited value because I didn't provide the other 4 things. All I gave it was the result. I'm not even going to watch the whole thing. It's really generic. You can see it. I hope this message finds you well as a valued customer. So now let's go all the way. Let's add all of them. Okay. I'm going to say it's a brand new one. I'm going to stop. And we'll add each one of these things in just to illustrate it. New conversation. Here's my result. Write a sales letter. Now, let me give it a role. Expert direct response copywriter. All right, so there's its role. Let's give it some intent. Let the reader know about the release of a new diet product. Okay, good, excellent. Put that in there. Now, let's give it some context. This is the diet product. It's called Synergy Crystals. These don't exist. I made this up. I'm a nerd. Take that in there. Paste that in. Oh, I didn't copy it. Go back. Paste it in. So now let's give it the last part. Give a constraint. Use persuasive language right at a 10th grade level. That's a constraint. Okay, good. Copy that. Throw it in. And now do your magic, ChatGPT. This is it's a lot better. First of all, it's not a generic template. It's completely oriented around this fictitious product, Synergy Crystals. It's speaking to the benefits of this because I gave it information about that. It's made up some special invitation. It's got a call to action. What do you want them to do? Visit our website now. It's also got a PS. Why? Because I put all of this in here. What its role is, what the result is you want, the intent, the context, and some constraints. You get a lot better result out of it. Okay. All right. So now let's switch gears. Remember this tool, ChatGPT, and this is the last thing we're going to go through. Okay. It's all about predicting text. We said that even if you give it limited information, it can do a decent job. And as you add more information, it can do a better job. But that doesn't just mean the 5 elements of the prompt It can also mean examples of what you want it to do. Let's talk about that. The first thing is a concept called a zero-shot prompt. In natural language processing models, zero-shot prompting is you're giving it a prompt that was not part of the training data, but the model can generate a result you desire. So here's something that was not part of the training data to the model. Why do I know this sentence right here was not part of the training data? Because I made it up. I wrote it. It was not trained on anything. It's just saying, hey, with no further information, please give me 2 sentences that describe a landscape with grassy plains and mountains in the distance as the introduction of a fantasy novel. Now, just for fun, so you guys can follow along, I'll paste that one in. Go here and create a new conversation. Paste it in. And without any further information, all right, there's a couple sentences. I kind of like that. Sprawling expanse of emerald grassy plains, majestic mountains, ancient guardians. Oh, all right, good. I mean, it's all right for fan fiction. Now, can you get better? Yes. You can do a one-shot prompt. One-shot prompting involves providing an example, like a single example in the prompt. It's going to guide the large language model towards the desired generated response. Okay, so we've given it the same request, but we said, hey, use the following text as an example. And here's a nice little example. Okay. So we copy both of these. I will give them to you in the chat. So we're giving it one example. Paste that into chat. You all can grab that if you want to. Remember to do this in a brand new conversation and throw it in. Okay, so now we've given it one example. How can you use this? Well, if you're creating some content and you already have an example of the kind of content you're trying to create, put it right into your prompt. It's not going to copy it word for word. It can understand the entire sentences, their structure, the relationship of one sentence to another sentence. It can figure out the intent behind it, the writing style, and it will emulate that style. You can get real complex with this, and you can actually have your writing example be at a separate web page, but that's more advanced, and you'll learn how to do stuff like that on our boot camps. Finally, you have what's called few-shot prompts. This is just the natural logical progression. Provide multiple examples in the prompt. I'm going to show you how complex and valuable this can be. I have a conversation that I had with ChatGPT about a couple months ago. I'm going to show you how it uses examples and a few more tips and tricks that are a special bonus. Look at this prompt. Here's some things you may not have known about ChatGPT. You can give it variables. I have a variable here called data. It's capitalized. And everything down to here is included in this variable called data. I have another variable called formula. And this is the few-shot examples. Every single one of these, and they go below the bottom of the screen, is an example of a headline. There's like 40 or 50 of them. And notice they can themselves have dynamic content. See, it says avatars here. We provided that above here. Notice it says primary goal. We provided that up here. This is how complex it can be. And ChatGPT can understand the format of text data so well that it can use everything up here in formulating examples of headlines down below. And you can see its output. Oh, and by the way, I gave it the 5 elements of the prompt here: role, result, intent, context, constraints. They're all in here. So this is an example of few-shot prompting. You can think of lots of ways probably to use this, but the whole point is we gave it dozens of examples to use in its work. And so the results we get out of it are pretty good. Make money like a Fortune 500 CEO. Got virtual assistant blues. Love it. What everybody should know about. I like these. All right, good. So we're getting towards the end of this, okay? I just want to review. If we go back up here, here's what we got is the basic terms from chatbot to language model, transformer, and what ChatGPT is. And most importantly, this framework for crafting a prompt. If you take nothing else away, write these down, take a screenshot, whatever you want to do, remember this information. It'll help you write better prompts in the future. All right, so that's the end of the ChatGPT part of this. Let's switch back over, if you give me just a second. And we have time for maybe a couple of questions here, okay? So what do we have, Regina, in terms of questions? I remember there's something from Mimi. There's a new one from Mimi, but let me go back up. I want to address that one from Mimi that came earlier.
All right, actually,
Yeah,
Mimi
what
just
was it?
reposted it.
Oh, good, thank you.
So if you go all the way down.
Okay. My partner and I were trying to see how to make ChatGPT come up with a proposal speech that's not cringy, but was still unsuccessful. Okay, so I don't have time to lead you through the whole thing on this. So I'm just going to describe it for you, what to do, okay? And then I'll get to Dominic's question. So Mimi, I talked in this last part about few-shot prompting, that there's sort of a more advanced thing you can do. Very often we're trying to get ChatGPT to create content according to a specific style. And often it's our own writing style. Not always, but regardless, you can only fit so much data into one of these prompts, right? But with the paid version of ChatGPT, you can tell ChatGPT to use the information on a web page. So what you do is you create a single web page that is full of the examples of how you want your writing to occur. If it was a marketing thing, you could have 15 marketing letters that was the only content on that page. And then all you would do is you would tell ChatGPT to create what you want using information at the following web link as an example of the writing. And then you'd paste in the link to where you had all of that information as the content of the web page. And that way it can read through all of the hundreds or thousands of words on that page, analyze it for writing style, and write your content in that style. There's so much variety there of what you want to be on the page, so many different styles of writing. But if you're trying to get it to speak in a certain voice with a certain format, you can give it hundreds of examples all on one web page, and it will analyze them very, very well. So I hope that helps. All right. You're welcome, Judy. Thank you. All right. Last question. Oh, Jeffrey, I want to address this. He has a great question. He says, why do you open a new chat every time? Doesn't ChatGPT have conversational context abilities? Absolutely. And I would not do that normally. I only did it as a training exercise so that as I did each of one of these, like if you look at the very first MySQL thing, then the next one, then the next one, I wanted you to see without any other factors in the conversation what ChatGPT would do as you added in each of those 5 elements of a good prompt. Normally, I wouldn't open up a new one. I only did that as a training exercise. Normally, you would do them all in one conversation. So it was a great question. Okay, good. All right, so look at the time here. I want to end off on this part of the Q&A, right? You are absolutely going to have a chance to go over. No, sorry, to send in other questions. Let me show you how we'll do that. Give me an F11 here, make it bigger. All right, so I want to talk about who and what we are, okay? So the Tech Academy is a provider of coding boot camps. In fact, we've got a dozen boot camps. You can see them listed on the screen here. They cover a wide range of subjects from artificial intelligence, what we've been talking about all night, computer programming, website development, cybersecurity, design, data science, video game development, mobile app development, and more. We have more certifications than any other bootcamp company on earth, and we're pretty proud of that. We put a lot of work into them. Another thing that's really important is that every single bit of our curriculum is objectively reviewed on an annual basis by the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. That is a very tough, very high bar. They review everything about what we teach and how we teach it. So we're pretty proud of that. So what are the characteristics of these boot camps? There's a lot of boot camps out there. What do we think makes ours special? Well, one, they're self-paced, as I talked about earlier, but they're also instructor supported. Think about your experience you have, say, when you go to college. Everybody starts a class on the same day. You move through the material in lockstep. And if you have missed something, it's really hard to go back. Or something's a little more difficult for you than it is for others, you can get left behind. We don't let that happen. It's self-paced, and you have access to an instructor to help you no matter where you are in a program, independent of where everybody else is who might be studying the same program. These boot camps are flexible. You set your own schedule for study, and you can enroll 365 days a year. The content is really well-rounded. It's in-depth. We're trying to give you everything you need to be a well-rounded entry-level technology worker in whatever discipline you choose from amongst these 12 boot camps, so that you are set for a good, to get into the industry and have a stable career after that. The boot camps are affordable. We had that conversation earlier about US dollars. They're priced under the national average. We do have boot camps that start as low as $5,300. And on that, we have a lot of different financing options, from upfront discounts and monthly payments. That's something you can talk to us about, right? One of the more important things is every one of these programs includes training on job placement and expert help from our job placement specialists in the activity of getting hired. You learn how to get the job, and we can help you do that actual job search, because you're doing this for a reason. We're happy when you get hired, and that's why you're doing it, right? And most importantly, all of these programs are designed for absolute beginners. We've given you a bit of a taste of how we would approach breaking down a complex subject in a way that any bright person could understand it. We've done that in about an hour, right? Imagine if you had a 600 to 800 hour boot camp to go through, and every part of what you would need to learn is broken down in that same way so that you can assimilate it, understand it, apply it on the job. That's how our boot camps are designed. You don't have to have prior knowledge or experience. You don't have to be a nerd. I'm a nerd, but that's just me. And so who are our programs for? Well, they're for anyone looking for a better career. Tech is a fantastic industry to work in. It's got great work-life balance. There's remote opportunities available, and technology pays really well. Also, a note, you don't need to know a lot of math to do computer programming. It's a myth that I like to dispel every time I can. So this isn't just us talking. This industry of boot camps is mature enough that for years now, independent organizations give out awards every year. And year after year after year, we receive awards for top coding boot camps in a lot of categories. And these are some of our awards. And us saying we're awesome is a lot less important than the graduates and students saying how they feel. We have an average of 4.8 star reviews across all these major review platforms. And we're very proud of that, because these are we have no control over this. This is people saying whatever they want to say about us, and we do really, really well on that. That's our student and graduate feedback. So if you'd like more information and if you want to receive a free coding bootcamp guide to help you figure out what's the right route into tech for you, because you've already seen there's at least 12 different routes, 12 different things you can do. If you want to figure out what might be the best for you, go to this link. Regina's dropping it in chat right now, okay? And fill out the brief form on there, and we will get you information and a free coding bootcamp guide. I'm going to pause for a moment, take a drink of water because I've been talking a lot. If you want to grab this link right now and fill that form out, super appreciate it. By the way, if you go to access that form and it takes you to a login screen, all that means is that at some point in the past, you already registered for an account with our school. And so you can enter in your credentials. At the bottom of this slide, it shows you what your credentials would be like. Your email address and that password. All right, I'll wait one more minute. And don't go anywhere. We got a free gift coming for you and information on upcoming classes, a bunch of cool stuff, and then we'll wrap up. Yes, by the way, Kelly, the boot camps can be done while you're working full-time. We have full-time and part-time options. That was actually important to us from day one. I can't tell you how hard Jack and I worked to make sure this program would work for people that were able to just take off and, give us 3 or 4 months of their time and just do it full time, and for people that had to work and it could only do it when they're in their off hours. So you absolutely can get to the boot camps while maintaining a full-time job. It's a great question. All right, so I want to let you know that we have a referral program. Since our graduates love us, one of the best sources for new students over the years has been referrals from existing graduates. This referral program is not limited to people who are graduates, though. Anyone can participate. We'll pay a 5% referral commission for anyone that you notify us of, get us connected to, that ends up signing up for a boot camp. And that can be a fair chunk of change, which you will deserve, because you'll be changing their life if they enroll in one of these boot camps. So in a moment, we're going to show you this free gift we're giving you, and you can have an opportunity to email us, information about that free gift to get it. And in there, if you include anyone you're referring to the school, we keep track of that. And if they sign up, we will send you a 5% referral commission. So I'm getting ready to show you this free gift, and I want to just kind of give you some context. We've written, 6 books and a dictionary over the years. We've got 3 learn coding basics in hours books. You can see those along the bottom. We've got a coding book for kids and young adults, which is really cool, actually. We've had a lot of kids go through it and love it. We've got a technology basics dictionary explaining complex terms in a simple manner, which is really valuable. And we've got a project management handbook. And one of the ones I'm happiest with, we have a book called You Are Not Stupid. Now, the first course everyone on our boot camps goes through is called the Computer Basics course. It's one of the most valuable things we put together. It removes all mystery from computers and technology and sets you up well for any of the boot camps. We took that content, put it into the book, and expanded upon it greatly. I mean, it even includes all the historical background of how we even arrived to have a computer industry and why that stuff matters. So this book honestly, it should be required reading for anybody. But if you're thinking about going into tech, it will really solidify your knowledge of the fundamentals underlying the whole industry. It's pretty cool. So here's the gift. We're giving a free, physical copy of the project management handbook that Jack and I wrote. If you want to know how software is made, what does it actually look like in practice? What do software developers and managers and designers, what do they all do on a day-to-day basis? This book lays out that whole process for you in a simple, easy to understand manner. We've had people that are experts in project management, have worked in the industry for years, go through this and just be blown away how it simplifies the whole thing for them. If you want your own physical copy of this book, just email your full name and don't forget to include your mailing address, because we're actually going to send you a book, right? Send it into books@learncodinganywhere.com. I'm going to, take a few minutes for people, a minute here for someone to, for people to fill that out. This is also where if you have Q&A that I didn't get to, you can include the question in there. Those all get forwarded to me. We'll get you an answer. And if you have people that you want to refer to the school, drop their contact information in there. We will register that to you and get you credit for it. So I'll pause for a moment for anybody who wants to send off this email to get the free gift. It's a really good book. All right. So we got a lot of things going on, and we want you to be able to connect to us easily. If you go to this link, which Regina's going to drop in chat, you'll see our link tree. It's just a collection of various links to different things we have going on, including our YouTube video list that has all of our free educational videos. These classes go on there about 24 to 48 hours after they're done. So you'll be able to rewatch this and any of our past, free classes that we're giving. It's also got links in there in this link tree to our books, our dictionary, our upcoming classes, our meetups. You'll find links in there as well, and all of our social media accounts. Here's the ask. We'd ask you to follow us on social media to be the first to find out what's going on with the school, and honestly, just make what we do more broadly spread so that the right people who we can help can find out about us. We'd ask you to invite your friends to future meetups. We give these classes twice a week. Some of them are actual coding classes. Some of them are just, tech education classes, similar to this one. Invite your friends. We would super appreciate that, right? Now, I talked this book up, and I won't stop talking about it because it's a really good book. This one's pretty hefty, though, 300 or 400 pages. If you want to win a free copy of this book, we can do that. And here's how it works. If you do two things, we'll enter you in to win a copy of this book. One, share a link to the next event on your social media. You'll find it at that Linktree link. Share the link to the next event and tag the Tech Academy. We're on all the major platforms. You can find us under the Tech Academy. Pretty easy to link us, right? But if you'll link to that, or to tag us, if you'll link to the next event and tag the Tech Academy, then you can be entered into a pool to win a copy of You Are Not Stupid. We'll send it right out to your house, okay? Don't have to do it. It'd be super appreciated if you did. And I think you'd really, really, really enjoy this book. And your family members probably would too. If you've got that relative who just cannot understand technology, this is the book you want to give to them. All right, so what are your next steps? Well, again, if you'd like to know more about who and what we are, want to get a free coding bootcamp guide, go to that link and we'll send it to you. If you've already filled out that form, make sure you return to that tab and go through the steps in it. Because once you filled it out, it takes you on a guided tour through our school and all the different programs just to find out if it's the right fit for you. It might not be, that's fine. But if it is, that's where you find out. Is tech for me? Is the Tech Academy for me? And which of these boot camps would be the best for me? You'll have those questions answered. That's all I've got. I hope this was helpful. I hope you, that you got something out of it, right? I'll stick around for a few minutes and just see if there's any other questions that are coming in. But again, this will go up on YouTube in about 24 to 48 hours. And you can use that books@learncodinganywhere.com email to send in requests for the book, but also to send more questions in if you have questions about AI or anything else. Thank you all so much. So yes, Kelly, it does want you to watch videos. Those videos orient you to the school, give you all the information you need to make an informed decision. Jeffrey says it looked like there were arrow functions in after I had given it a constraint. Let's go back here. Let's go back to this is the fourth, like the next to the last one. And this next to the last one did in fact have arrow functions under the update product. Let's go to the final one. Here's update product right here, and it does not have arrow functions. So it did in fact obey the constraint. I think it's because I was going back and forth so quickly that it looked like it didn't, but it did in fact obey the constraint and not include the thing I didn't want it to include. That was a good question.